David, oh my gosh, sorry. If you can hear us, we're ready when you are.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to the January 9th meeting of the Arlington County Planning Commission. My name is Devanshi Patel. Tonight, the commission will consider the following. Well, actually, I should say I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. Let me start there. Tonight, the Planning Commission will consider the following. A request to advertise public hearings regarding the update to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan, items associated with the Crystal Plaza 5 site plan, and PC business, including a motion to adjourn for our annual closed-door session with the county attorney. I'd like to share a few logistical points for those members or commissioners participating remotely. Tonight's meeting is available as a broadcast with closed captioning from Comcast Xfinity's channels 25 and 1085, Verizon Fios channels 39 and 40, and the county website. Audio of tonight's meeting is available via phone. If commissioners, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity during tonight's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. For other presenters and speakers joining us through Microsoft Teams, please keep your phones and devices muted until you are called upon. Please turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference, and please keep your cameras off until the clerk calls on you to speak. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. Once you have spoken, please turn your cameras off, and if you're dialing in by phone, press *6 to unmute. Public speakers, you will be called upon by the clerk at an assigned time. Pre-registration to speak at tonight's hearing was required. We are not able to accommodate additional speakers. Speakers will have 2 minutes to comment as individuals and 3 minutes to speak if representing an organization. A speaking timer will be displayed on screen by the clerk. If you are dialing in by phone and unable to see the screen, we will provide an audible warning when 30 seconds are remaining. You will be unmuted when your time has concluded. You'll be muted when your time is concluded. The meeting chat is active for presenters or commissioners who need technical assistance only. Please do not use the meeting chat for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comment must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. Okay, so now that we have managed to get through that opening script, barely, I am going to seek unanimous consent for us to adjourn for the closed-door session with the county attorney. Any objection? Okay, so we stand adjourned. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. So I make the following motion to take a roll call or other recorded vote immediately after the closed meeting. I move that the members of the Arlington County Planning Commission certify that at the just concluded closed session 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Chapter 37, Title 2.2 of the Code of Virginia. And 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Let me take a vote. So Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Steinberger? Aye. Guerin?
Aye.
Schroll?
Aye.
Nantemi?
Aye.
Sarli?
Aye.
Weir? Do we have Commissioner Weir on virtually? Okay.
We did a moment ago. Maybe he's having some technical difficulties.
Are we not connected to Teams right now?
We are.
We are, okay. And how about Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Thank you very much. So that is 7, 8 ayes. The motion carries. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Our first item is a request to advertise public hearings by the Planning Commission and County Board regarding an update to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan, an element of Arlington's comprehensive plan. And we have a staff presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ty Asfau. I'm in the Department of Environmental Services in the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management. We're going to go over the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan. It was last published in 2001. It's part of the comprehensive plan. It's been over 20 years, so there are many changes in the county stormwater program since 2001, and we've gone through the process of updating this plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Lily to give us a background on the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan, and we'll go back and forth.
Hello, good evening. My name is Lily Whitesell. I'm happy to be here. First, a little bit of background about where this is coming from. So there are 3 different documents that we'll reference tonight having to do with Chesapeake Bay preservation. First, the Chesapeake Bay Act was a piece of Virginia legislation originally enacted in 1988. It has had other updates since then that focused on protecting water quality through land use management. Then from that came 2 other things. So a local Arlington County Chesapeake Bay ordinance that the county was required to adopt in order to comply with the Virginia's Bay Act. And then also coming out of the Bay Act was the requirement for Arlington and other localities to adopt a comprehensive plan element, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan, which we did originally, again, in 2001, as Ty said. So we often get questions about this. We're going to kind of address it up front. The takeaway message from this slide here is that the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan's genesis is completely separate from any nutrient and sediment reduction requirements for the Chesapeake Bay total maximum daily load, if you've heard about that. So that's sort of the pollution diet for the Chesapeake Bay, and this is separate from that. That's not what we're talking about tonight. And if folks have questions, we can revisit this slide and talk a little bit more about it. So why this update now?
So in 2020, we were audited by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. So they looked at the Arlington County's Chesapeake Bay Preservation Program. They visited active construction sites, and they looked at approved plans, and they also looked at the plan, and they noted that it is outdated, and per the requirements of the Bay Act, we're supposed to have updated Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan. So we're under corrective action and a compliance schedule to have a plan updated and adopted by this year. And we were on a tight timeline to update the plan. So what we've done is we have updated what we've done to date, but we haven't introduced any new policy as part of this plan. So what are resource protection areas? We have mentioned RP several times now. So the blue line there is an imaginary stream, and there's a 100-foot buffer from water bodies. That is the 100-foot buffer. So the idea is that this area is protected, and there are additional permitting requirements for projects in the RPA. So the RMA is the area outside the RPA, so the whole county is a resource management area. And so we're all basically in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and we have stormwater requirements to meet, but the RPA is more sensitive, and there are additional requirements in that area. So the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan, as required by the Bay Act, it has to include areas, so the maps have to show where the resource protection areas are in the county. So these maps were updated in 2018. It just wasn't part of the plan, so we have included that as part of the plan. We also have a narrative on how we permit projects in the resource protection areas, and that has also been improved since 2001. There's several ordinances in place, and in addition to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance. So we have incorporated the requirements. What we do have to include is the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan has to be adopted and included as part of the comp plans. So there are several planning documents that are relevant to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan. So we are showing here on this slide the Forestry Natural Resources Plan, which is currently under development, the Public Spaces Master Plan, and the Stormwater Master Plan, which were finalized before. So what we've done is we've referenced all the sections that are relevant to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan, and coordinated with the FNRP folks as that's being developed as well. Next slide.
All right, and as Ty mentioned, we did coordinate with the folks on the Forestry and Natural Resources Plan, and that was also in response to stakeholder requests. We do have a letter of support from the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission after making those revisions. So we also did, in terms of other stakeholder input, we did also receive some requests to expand the scope of the plan, but then we explained the reasons for the current scope, and folks did understand that. In terms of the plan adoption process and timeline, we really began the engagement process over in spring 2022, shared a draft plan over the summer and through the fall, made changes based on the feedback that we did receive, and again, we are looking to go forward in February with board adoption. Any questions or comments?
Clerk, do we have any public speakers?
Not for this item.
Okay, so the matters with the commission. I don't know if we really need to go into buckets at this point. Does anybody have anything that they want to, any questions that they have? Commissioner Guerin?
Commission reports, there's no other commissions
Yeah, no,
wish to speak, or
no,
TC didn't hear this, right?
yeah, okay. Commissioner Guerin.
Thank you very much, and very nice to see you, Ms. Whitesell. My question is, are we reflecting in this our current discussions to plan for increased density and increased impervious surface area with things like the missing middle plan?
My name's Kristen Joliker, and I work with Ty and Lily, and I guess I'll address that. The Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan really addresses the width and breadth of our current stormwater program. It doesn't necessarily address what growth in terms of a missing middle might, the impact that might have on the Chesapeake Bay, those Chesapeake Bay preservation areas.
Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners? Any motions? Would you like to make it?
I move the Planning Commission recommend the County Board adopt the attached resolution to authorize advertisement of public hearings by the Planning Commission on January 9th, 2023, and by the County Board on January 21st, 2023, to consider the adoption of an updated Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan, which is an element of the county's comprehensive plan.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Schroll. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, let's take the roll. Commissioner Bagley?
Aye.
Steinberger? Aye. Gearin?
Aye.
Schroll?
Aye.
Antelmi?
Aye.
Sarli?
Aye.
Weir?
Abstain.
Peterson?
Aye.
Patel? Aye. So the motion carries a vote of 8-0. Okay, Madam Clerk, the next matter?
Item number 2 is rezoning 19-00004 CESC Plaza Limited Partnership, CESC Plaza 5 Limited Partnership for a rezoning from CO Mixed Use District to CO Crystal City Mixed Use Crystal City District for an approximately 102,159 square foot area located at 223 23rd Street South and 2200 and 2250 Crystal Drive, RPC number 34020003, 017, 018, and 265. CCBP M-2, CESC Plaza Limited Partnership, CESC Plaza 5 Limited Partnership for a Crystal City Block Plan which provides supplemental long-range planning guidance and an integrated planning approach for Block M as identified in Crystal City Sector Plan, defined by 20th Street South to the north, 23rd Street South to the south, Crystal Drive to the east, and Richmond Highway to the west. This block plan supports and further refines the Crystal City Sector Plan recommendations for this block. The block plan illustrates and reaffirms desired qualities relating to block structure and neighborhood form, land uses, accessibility and circulation, public open spaces, sustainable development, and other plan elements. It provides conceptual build-out scenarios related to site plans number 11, 458, and 464 that each reflect a variety of sector plan recommendations. RPC number 34-020, 003, 017, 018, 255, 256, 257, 258, 265, 268, 269, 281, 283, 284, 289, 290, and 291. SPLA 20-00055, Site Plan Number 11, CESC Plaza Limited Partnership, CESC Plaza 5 Limited Partnership for a site plan amendment to remove 102,159 square feet from the existing Site Plan Number 11 in the CO zoning district under Arlington County Zoning Ordinance Section 7.13 and 15.5, located at 220 20th Street South, 2221 South Clark, 265, 268, 269, 281, 289, and 290. Modifications of zoning ordinance requirements include density, reduced parking, and other modifications as necessary to achieve the proposed development plan. Applicable policies are the General Land Use Plan, High Office Apartment Hotel, Crystal City Coordinated Redevelopment District Note 1, and Crystal City Sector Plan. And lastly, SPLN 20-00015, CESC Plaza Limited Partnership, CESC Plaza 5 Limited Partnership for a final site plan number 464, to construct approximately 11.46 FAR total density, including approximately 1,439 residential units and approximately 22,927 square feet of commercial gross floor area in the CO Crystal City zoning district under Arlington County Zoning Ordinance Section 7.1, 7.16, and 15.5. Property is approximately 102,159 square feet, located at 2221 South Clark Street, 223 23rd Street South, and 2200 and 2250 Crystal Drive, RPC 34020003, 017, 018, and 265. Modifications of zoning ordinance requirements include additional density, reduced parking ratios, required loading spaces, tower separation modification, density exclusions, and other modifications as necessary to achieve the proposed development plan. Applicable policies are the General Land Use Plan, High Apartment Office Hotel, and Crystal City Coordinated Redevelopment District Note 1, Crystal City Sector Plan, and Arlington County Retail Plan.
Thank you. So just a reminder that staff has 10 minutes for their presentation. The applicant has 15. Thank you.
And we have a staff presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I am Michael Cullen with the Arlington County CPHD Planning Division. Tonight, I'll be providing the staff overview of the application for the Crystal Plaza 5 site plan project and the associated agenda items. So these items include a requested rezoning, update to the Crystal City Block Plan for Block M, site plan amendment for a portion of Site Plan 11 extending across the block, the new Site Plan 464 for the Crystal Plaza 5 project, and associated ordinances of vacation for public easements. The proposed project site is located at the southeast corner of Block M in the Crystal City neighborhood, bookending the block with the Crystal Plaza 1 project that was approved in 2021. The site is currently occupied by the Crystal Plaza 5 office building, and until this year, a portion of the one-story retail shops along Crystal Drive. Sites subject to the amendment to Site Plan 11 include the 20th Street Apartments, the Crystal Plaza 3 and 4 office buildings, the Crystal City shops, and the mixed residential office building at the Crystal Plaza 5 site. The GLUP map designation for the site highlighted here is a high office apartment hotel. The site is located in the Crystal City Coordinated Redevelopment District with 2 locations for public space identified. The site is currently zoned CO Mixed Use District, and the applicant proposes a rezoning to CO Crystal City, which corresponds to the GLUP designation. The block was originally approved for development as Crystal Plaza in 1963. In 2021, a Crystal City block plan was approved for the block concurrently with the Crystal Plaza 1 project. And the Crystal City PDSP was also approved in 2020 with the subject Plaza 5 site included. The PDSP identifies use and density allocations across a number of sites in Crystal City with a framework of community benefits and contributions to achieve the allocated density. As you may recall, an amendment to the PDSP was approved last month in anticipation of this site plan. The site plan proposal includes 2 new residential towers with ground floor retail at a total density just under 12.0 FAR, 2 dedicated public open spaces, including an interim portion of the 23rd Street Plaza known as Open Space 10, and Open Space 11 that is proposed as a public plaza extending from Crystal Drive. The applicant also proposes a new north-south connection that provides parking and loading access located between the 2 towers. The project would bring the site grade down to the sidewalk level along Crystal Drive and 23rd Street, and in so doing would relocate the existing Crystal City Underground entrance from 23rd Street to the north side of the site. Requested modifications include additional density, reduced parking ratios, required loading spaces, density exclusions, and tower separation from the existing Plaza 6 building to the west. So each of the 2 new buildings has been designed by a different architect. The west tower at 223 23rd Street wraps around the proposed interim 23rd Street Plaza area and would contain approximately 613 units with about 8,000 square feet of ground floor retail. Both buildings are 30 stories tall, with building height slightly greater than 300 feet. Both buildings are also proposed to obtain minimum LEED Gold certification. The 2250 building is the larger of the 2, located at the corner of Crystal Drive and 23rd Street, and would contain over 800 units with approximately 18,000 square feet of ground floor retail. The proposed parking for both buildings is 0.3 spaces per unit, with parking located both in underground garage structure that will be rebuilt on site, as well as proposed off-site parking located in existing parking garage space across Crystal Drive. The applicant also requests vacations for easements located along 23rd Street South, which will be replaced by new easements required by site plan condition and include compensation to the county. This plat shows the location of the existing public street and utilities easement to be vacated. And this plat shows the location of the existing public sidewalk and utilities easement to be vacated. So planning and policy guidance for redevelopment is primarily provided in the Crystal City Sector Plan, and in the next few slides, we'll just outline some relevant guidance and recommendations for the project. In the course of review, staff analyzed the project for compliance with county goals and policies outlined in the documents that are listed here, including the administrative guidance for office conversions, the Crystal City Sector Plan, the residential parking guidelines, the zoning ordinance, and then a number of other applicable documents and guidelines. As a refresher, given how important these particular guidelines are to the evolution of the project, the sector plan identifies building design guidelines that both encourage pedestrian scale design and regulate density in Crystal City. These include maximum building height, tower coverage limited to 85% across the block, with tower floors no greater than 35,000 square feet on a single level, and additional guidance for defining building podiums, tower sculpting through facade stepbacks, and distinguished building tops with further sculpting and enhanced mechanical penthouse screening. The sector plan also identifies 2 new public open spaces that are expected to be delivered with redevelopment of this subject site, labeled as Open Spaces 10 and 11. Open Space 10, known as the 23rd Street Plaza, is envisioned as a large 13,000 square foot space to be framed with retail storefront and quote, noteworthy architecture. The Open Space 11, simply described as a landscaped plaza with tables and seating for outdoor dining, is envisioned as a smaller 3,300 square foot space with flexibility from the exact location identified in the sector plan. In the following slides, I will go further. I'll further detail the project's evolution following both staff and community feedback. Throughout the site plan review process, the applicant made changes to the building design based on staff and community comments, which include addressing identified deviations from the sector plan. Staff identified specific frontages highlighted in red here that should be revised to encourage pedestrian scale design and building through tower stepbacks. Additional feedback requested defining building tops through facade materials and sculpting, and implementation of retail frontage design along 23rd Street Plaza and the West Tower facade along a future Clark Bell Street alignment. On the West Tower, the applicant did implement a 5-foot tower step back, both on 23rd Street along the north side of the 23rd Street Plaza and 23rd Street itself. The mechanical penthouse structure design, in staff's opinion, was also improved, and retail facade design elements were implemented appropriately on the ground floor of the western building wing. Staff has noted that the western building facade facing a future Clark Bell Street alignment does not include a recommended tower step back, and this will factor into the review of a future streetscape and expansion of the 23rd Street Plaza, which would be anticipated with redevelopment of the Crystal Plaza 5 site to the west. On the east tower, the applicant implemented 5-foot tower stepbacks on both Crystal Drive and 23rd Street. To accommodate this design change that was emphasized by staff, the space between the building wings was narrowed slightly, and the tower bump out facing Crystal Drive was lowered by several floors. The design of the interim 23rd Street Plaza Park, known as Open Space 10, went through several iterations, incorporating feedback from staff, SPRC, and Park and Rec Commission. The resulting design incorporates recent PRC feedback calling for additional shade trees, greater enclosure of the space with native plantings, landscape mounding, and curvature for the walkway on the west side of the space. The east-west connection plaza, known as Open Space 11, included modest changes throughout the process that included a potential focal point with public art, additional hardscaping, and general clarifications of pedestrian clear zones and routes through the space to the relocated Crystal City Underground entrance at the west end of the plaza. Proposed transportation elements are consistent with both the sector plan and guidance from the Crystal City Bike Network Plan, including improving Crystal Drive with an approximately 18-foot streetscape and 23rd Street with a 14.5-foot streetscape. Pedestrian circulation is available through the site from both street frontages to the underground entrance. Stairs located at the northwest corner of the site provide pedestrian access to the center of the block, and the north-south connection moves parking and loading access off primary streets consistent with sector plan guidance. In addition, the project will include coordination with the county and a contribution to the 23rd Street South Realignment Transportation Project, which will implement the envisioned full street section from the sector plan on 23rd, continuing the design to Route 1 in coordination with VDOT, and include a narrowed entrance to the Crystal Park Garage across Crystal Drive. The project includes a new underground garage structure connecting to the existing garage below much of the block, which will not exceed 15% compact parking spaces and will include visitor and ADA parking spaces on site. However, the applicant proposes a 0.3 spaces per unit parking ratio that is achieved by including approximately 200 spaces located off-site in the Crystal Park's office complex across Crystal Drive. Each tower includes 5 loading spaces. However, the zoning ordinance requires 6 loading spaces in the east tower due to the number of proposed units, and the applicant has requested a modification for that 1 space difference. Combined bike parking includes 579 Class 1 spaces located in both garages below the west tower and on the ground floor of each building. As noted, parking would be provided both on-site and in the garage, in the Crystal Park Office Complex garage. Associated requests include parking modifications to allow that off-site parking for existing uses within JBG Smith-owned properties on Site Plan 11, on the Site Plan 11 block, and modifications for commercial parking ratios across those Site Plan 11 sites, and the office buildings located on the Crystal Park block approved under Site Plan 167. The residential parking guidelines support the proposed parking ratio for the Plaza 5 project, and the diagram on the right helps illustrate how this request is consistent with the off-site shared parking guidance, as it is within 800 feet of the subject block, and the buildings have the same owner. In addition to standard site plan benefits and site improvements, the project will deliver a number of benefits to the county. First, following feedback and negotiation through the review process, the applicant worked to achieve a commitment under the Green Building Incentive Policy at the 0.25 FAR level, which includes LEED Gold certification, 20% energy savings, and baseline requirements, including efficient appliances and fixtures, energy benchmarking, and 4% of parking spaces to include EV chargers, and at least 15% of spaces to include EV charging infrastructure, as well as the use of bird-friendly materials at the lower building facades. The project will deliver 35 committed affordable units off-site at the River House development, and provide an additional 4.75 AHIF contribution above the base 3.37 million AHIF contribution for site plans. The project will construct 2 new public spaces with a public park easement provided for the 23rd Street Plaza. Would you like me to continue? Again, just have a couple more slides.
Well, we're going to call the third item, so we can just go ahead and finish this. That's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, this does include the third item. Finally, the applicants will also provide $3.5 million for infrastructure improvements associated with the 23rd Street realignment project. So public review for the project began with LRPC for the Crystal City Block Plan starting in February of 2022, and went through the SPRC process between May and September, and included additional commissions in November with C2E2, Housing Commission, and Parks and Recreation, and then recently a Transportation Commission on January 5th. So in closing, the project would conform to and achieve a wide range of the county's goals and objectives, including general adherence to the design guidance of the sector plan, realization of streetscapes envisioned in the sector plan, and protected bicycle infrastructure consistent with the Crystal City Bike Network guidance, improved pedestrian circulation, and maintaining a pedestrian connection to the Crystal City Underground, deliver infrastructure contributions that will help deliver the 23rd Street design envisioned in the sector plan, deliver public spaces envisioned in the sector plan, commitments to both the off-site 35 units of affordable housing and a total 8.12 AHIF contribution, and then sustainability commitments which are consistent with the current Green Building Incentive Policy, which is greater than the commitment originally approved under the Crystal City PDSP in 2020. And finally, redevelopment of aged vacant office space that will create new housing units in the Crystal City neighborhood.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the third item on the agenda?
The third item is an ordinance to vacate a portion of an easement for public street and utility purposes running west from Crystal Drive towards South Clark Street on the south side of parcel A43, Crystal Plaza, RPC number 34020-265, and parcel A4, re-subdivision of property of Washington Brick and Terracotta and Rebecca Ross, Lipscomb Estate, Arlington, Virginia, RPC number 34-020-017 with conditions, and an ordinance to vacate a portion of an easement for public sidewalk and utility purposes running west from Crystal Drive towards South Clark Street on the south side of parcel A43 Crystal Plaza, RPC number 34-020-265, and parcel A4, re-subdivision of property of Washington Brick and Terracotta Co., and Rebecca Ross, Lipscomb Estate, Arlington, Virginia, RPC number 34-020-017 with conditions. And we have three public speakers for these items. And there is no staff presentation.
Okay. But we do have the applicant.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madhvi Shukla. I'm joined by the design team for the 223 23rd Street and 2250 Crystal Drive project tonight to discuss our site plan. So, as you all may know by the names, this project is located on the corner of 23rd Street and Crystal Drive, highlighted in this bright blue box below. And what we hope to accomplish with this site plan is to balance the residential offerings in Crystal City and evolve this area. As Michael mentioned, right now there is a vacant office building that was built in the 60s that sits on the site today. One thing I wanted to mention was that this site is sloped at various different grades, which has created some challenging pedestrian conditions that we hope to cure with our new site plan. And to summarize, across both projects, that means we're going to be introducing 1.1 million square feet of new residential, about 1,400 units across both towers. We'll be targeting a 0.3 ratio and utilizing parking off-site to minimize the impact of the parking garage and participating in Arlington's Green Building Incentive Program. And I'll walk you through our site plan. So starting from 23rd Street, moving into Crystal Drive, you have the L-shaped 223 23rd Street building with 8,000 square feet of open space in front of it. As you move further right, you hit our north-south connection, which is a curbless street designed to pull parking and loading entries off of 23rd Street and Crystal Drive and minimize the congestion that may occur on those streets. And as you move further east, you have the 2250 Crystal Drive building, and atop that, the east-west connection to the north. And I just want to call out these connections because they've played a key role in creating a more pedestrian-friendly environment, which has been one of our guiding design principles throughout this process. And in addition to that, creating a bike-friendly area has also been important to us, and we are going to be introducing 1,600 feet of protected bike lanes on both Crystal Drive and 23rd Street. I'm going to let the design teams discuss the architecture, but I just also wanted to highlight here that we had two different design architects on one site plan with the goal of introducing two different styles of buildings to the block and having a diversity in the design. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Joe from FX.
Good evening. My name is Joe Pikevich from FX Collaborative Architects. I'm going to talk about 223 23rd Street. The composition of the building at 223 23rd Street, as Madhvi mentioned, is an L-shaped plan framing open space number 10 on 23rd Street. The building is comprised of 3 volumes, a north wing and a south wing, and a central connector we call the pin. The 2 volumes at the north and south are clad in a red glazed brick. The central pin has a darker volume and it rises to a greater height to screen mechanical equipment at the top of the building. In coordination with the SPRC and staff, we've made some refinements to the building, as noted before, incorporating a 5-foot setback above the 3rd Street on 23rd Street, adjusting the volume of the pin element to have greater articulation with notches at the corners, also revising that element to have consistent cladding from at the top of the building to match the cladding below, so that it really forms a crown to the building. And we've also improved the proportions of that south volume. When we incorporated the 5-foot setback, it became a taller, more slender volume. Zooming into this space around the base of the building, around the open space, we have created a 2-story element framed by a horizontal colonnade that is the entry into the building. Framing the open space, we have active uses with retail facing 23rd Street, and also in collaboration with staff, we've changed what was a building amenity into a retail space at the north side of the open space. On 23rd Street, We have retail frontage on that street, and we've improved this as well by eliminating some of the solid vertical piers and incorporating more glass into the facade. And with that, I'll turn it over to Clara to discuss 2250.
Good evening. Clara Weinberg with SCB Architecture. So I want to share with you our vision for the prominent corner of 23rd and Crystal Drive. So the building, as Madhvi summarized, is quite significant and a key anchor to the district. Our vision began with a strong podium that's really addressing the pedestrian realm. And on this page, I just want to point out where we started out, we're showing the current design, pushing back from where we originally proposed. There, thank you, original massing on the left, and working with staff and really trying to further articulate the massing and the emphasis on the podium and the pedestrian realm. We shifted 5 feet both the Crystal Drive side and the 23rd Street side, still emphasizing the arms and the different textures between the different facades, but highlighting the podium articulation. To that podium articulation, we had a strong feeling of making sure that the residential is pronounced along 23rd, and so you're seeing that centered entry that really denotes a different use compared to the regular rhythms of the retail. What you also start seeing, Abdi, if you could go to the next one, on this podium, you start seeing the play of residential immediately above the retail, with some play of balconies. You also see here the push back from Crystal Drive, the emphasis on the podium. And then you're also seeing the retail expression along the east-west connector as one of those pedestrian activators that Madhvi mentioned. Also in context here, you're seeing the relationship to the rest of the 2200 block and certainly further beyond of the retail creating a rhythm, a datum along the pedestrian realm where our building picks up on the various heights that already exist within the Crystal City Drive area, or Crystal Drive area.
Good evening. Andrew Cridlin with OJB, the project landscape architect. So I'm going to take you through the open spaces. So to start out, again, that was defined by the staff presentation. This site has both Park 10, which we are providing 8,000 square feet during this first development, with an additional 5,000 square feet being provided with the future redevelopment of 2221 South Clark Street. And then Park 10, which is shown in this diagram, the sector plan at the intersection of 23rd Street and Crystal Drive. We're providing 5,500 square feet through the SPRC process that has gotten moved north inward of the block to provide a clearer connection from Crystal Drive to the new underground entry. So starting at the proposed open space 10, you can see the 8,000 square feet outlined in sort of the green dash line, flanked on the north by retail and on the east side by the building entry and the retail along 23rd Street. There's an open lawn space flanked on kind of the four corners by large planted areas bermed with shade trees that were added on the south through the SPRC process and working with staff to provide shading in that sort of southern orientation. Plenty of opportunities for pollinators and seeding along the edge in the planting areas, and then we provided that sinuous path on the left with a small dog relief area, both for the community and for residents of this building. You can see in the 3D view here, again, adding that path on the left really softens the western half of this. And you can see in the green shape what that additional 5,000 square feet from the future redevelopment might look like along the west edge of the project. Moving to open space 11, also known as east-west connection. This is about providing a connection from Crystal Drive to the future underground entry shown there in letter J. This is really a linear space moving people through, providing that focal point on the end as a wayfinding element. You have a large open space activated with retail on the east side, and then activating the underground entry on the west is a large plaza with tables and chairs for seating. And you can see in the rendering here that it's a well-lit space, plenty of opportunities for planting along the edges, and then that focal point at the entry to the underground.
And I'm Felice Brickta. I wanted to, with Grove Slate, I wanted to highlight a couple of the transportation elements of the plan. So this view shows the 23rd Street cross-section looking east. So you can see here the 8-foot clear zone, amenity zone, the 5-foot protected bike lane, the adjacent median that's between the bike lane and 23rd Street. And then you can't see it here quite as well. You can see it up in the plan view, but there is on-street parking for either parking or pickup drop-off activity located on the north and the south side of 23rd Street. And this view shows the Crystal Drive section looking north. So again, you can see the 9-foot clear zone, 7-foot amenity zone. Again, 5-foot protected bike lane with the median adjacent to Crystal Drive. And again, there is on-street parking along Crystal Drive along the site frontage. Then again, we talked a bit about the north-south connection already, but I think, a couple of things to note here are how the loading for each of the buildings is provided on each side of the north-south connection to pull that activity off of 23rd Street. Again, there's a garage entrance located just north of the loading areas that does provide just the one garage entrance into the garage for both of the buildings. And then again, the garage does connect internally to the existing Crystal Drive garage entrances. Another thing to note on this plan is up at the north end of the north-south connection, there's some short-term parking that's located along a connection to future Clark Bell Street. And then another thing we just wanted to highlight is the bike parking rooms on the ground level of each of the buildings. So, which is a nice feature. You can roll bikes right in at the ground level, and there's additional bike parking located in the garage below as well. And then this is just another rendering of the north-south connection, so you can see how the street will work with the loading and the activity off of north-south connection. And again, we've discussed vehicular parking already quite a bit, so I won't spend too much time on this one. But again, 0.3 space per unit plus visitor parking located on site. The project will propose 243 spaces on site, and then the additional 200 spaces across the street at the Parks block on the east side of Crystal Drive. Again, visitor parking spaces provided on site, and then this is compliant with off-site shared parking guidelines within the distances allowable for off-site parking. And then finally, just a quick overview of transportation improvements. Again, we talked about the north-south connection with the flush curb, east-west connection. We did talk about this previously, but there is a mid-block connection located just west of the north-south connection. You can see here that's also adjacent to floating bus stops provided on 23rd Street, so an improvement to the existing bus stops there. Again, protected bike lanes, both eastbound and westbound on Crystal Drive, as well as eastbound and westbound on 23rd Street, as well as southbound on Crystal Drive. Two protected bike intersections on the corners of 23rd Street and Crystal Drive and 23rd Street and Clark Bell. And then again, the narrowed entrance into the Parks garage across the street as part of the 23rd Street realignment.
Hi, I'm Mike Babcock with Sustainable Building Partners. We're the sustainability consultant, energy consultant on the job, and we're going to talk real briefly about some of the commitments that have been made by the project. So, as staff had mentioned, the project has upped their sustainable performance commitment from the standard LEED Silver level and is using the Green Building Incentive Program as a framework for defining success. Not to go through each of these, but sustainability is woven through all aspects of the project, LEED Gold being one of the primary drivers, but as we know, there's many different ways to get to LEED Gold. A couple things that we want to highlight is a heightened focus on embodied carbon, and really looking at the materiality of the project as it relates to carbon reduction, bird-friendly materials, and collision mitigation strategies for that critical area. Also, what we're looking at is off-site Tier 2 solar. So when we look at how we can push for further reductions in carbon reductions for the project, as well as some of these other items that are really pushing sustainability forward on both projects. As we know, a heightened focus on energy efficiency in the county. It's been this way for quite some time. The project has improved upon initial looks in terms of systems, including higher level performance for their water source heat pumps, the incorporation of a heat pipe energy recovery system, advanced controls for dedicated outside air, as well as the Energy Star and the low-flow fixtures, all of which will reduce the energy density of these high-density buildings. And we also want to note that this is continuing to evolve. Based on where we are, we're going to continue to look for opportunities to save energy that make sense for the project.
30 seconds remaining.
I will just go over the community benefits at a high level because Michael covered a lot of these. I think the main themes that we want to highlight here are transportation, open space, and sustainability. These three are going to be significant improvements to Crystal City, and we're really excited to be bringing those forward. So the realignment of 23rd Street, the construction of the east-west connection, and the construction of the 23rd Street Plaza, and participating in LEED Gold and the Green Building Incentive are things that we're all very excited about with this project.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, any public speakers?
We do. We have 3 public speakers for this item. First, we'll start with Bernard Byrne, who's joining us on Teams. Bernard, if you're ready, we are ready for your comment.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Just a reminder, you have
Yes.
minutes.
Yes, I'm commenting on the plant list and the landscape plan for this project, for the landscape plan for this project. I've expressed my concerns about these during the site plan review process and in correspondence with the applicant. The applicant has responded well to my concerns regarding the plant list, but not to the overall landscape plan. All of the plants are native to the United States except for one. The plant list in the site plan sheet L100 contains common milkweed and folk milkweed, which will feed monarch butterfly caterpillars. However, the applicant should remove Carex divulsa from the list. This is a non-native sedge that may become invasive. Sheet L100 lists 10 species of ornamental grasses and sedges. The applicant should plant few of these. These plants are wind-pollinated and do not support pollinators. Some are aggressive and can crowd out plants that do support pollinators. Regarding open space, this is where I have the problems. The open space near 23rd Street within open space 10 will contain a large central lawn and smaller planting areas near its edges. However, lawns support few pollinators, birds, and other wildlife. Further, many public spaces in Crystal City and elsewhere in Arlington have lawns. The County Board's 2016 Monarch Pledge recommends that the county work with developers to include the installation of plants that support pollinators. The project will not adequately comport with that pledge if the site plan retains much of that lawn. Please recommend the application replace much or all of the lawn in open space 10 with a planting area that is similar to those along its edges. The area should contain native plants that thrive in sunlight, including common milkweed. The east-west connection, open space 11, has too much pavement, especially at its west end. It has too few trees and too few ornamental planting areas. This connection will be mostly shaded. The applicant should replace some of the pavement with areas and boxes containing shade-tolerant plants that support pollinators, including folk milkweed. The north-south connection will be mostly paved and have few trees. This area will receive sunlight during much of the day. The applicant will replace some of that with pavement with areas and boxes containing plants that will thrive in sunlight and support pollinators. Now, this is an interesting point coming up. An interim open space in front of the Crystal Plaza 6 building at the west end of 23rd Street will have a large lawn. Although it is part of the site plan, the staff report does not discuss this open space, which sheet 111, L107 shows to be sodded. The area receives sunlight throughout much of the day. The applicant should replace the lawn with native plants that thrive in sunlight and support pollinators. This seems to have been an oversight, and this lawn really should be taken out and changed to an area that will support pollinators. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne.
Our next speaker is with an organization, Joan McIntyre, on behalf of the Climate Change, Energy, and Environment Commission.
Good evening, Ms. McIntyre. It is?
Okay, it's on, all right. I was looking for a light. Okay. Good evening, I'm Joan McIntyre, Chair of the Climate Change, Energy, and Environment Commission. To start, I'd like to
acknowledge that the sustainability commitment for this project has improved considerably during the course of the SPR process. And I'd also like to thank JBG Smith for attending our October meeting and also for giving us a copy of the zero carbon assessment prior to this meeting. The project's participation in the green building incentive policy ensures that it will meet the sustainability levels ensure a minimum level of sustainability that's and contributes to the county's energy goals. And overall, we score this at a 60%. But it does, like many of the other projects that we've reviewed, fall short in what's really required to meet the county's goal for climate for carbon neutrality by 2050. In particular, the use of fossil gas systems on site will lock the greenhouse gas emissions for a decade or more at a time when rapid reduction is needed to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. Key shortfalls include on energy efficiency, the project does commit to 20% improvement in energy efficiency over the ASHRAE baseline. The zero carbon assessment does, however, indicate that design changes could allow for as much as 35% energy efficiency gains, and JBG Smith should seek to maximize such gains. On electrification, the project is planning for fossil gas systems for both HVAC and centralized hot water. The zero carbon assessment notes that challenges to electrification of space, initial system costs, and operational expenses, but the building could be designed for future electrification. As the technology is rapidly evolving, we would strongly encourage JBG Smith to continue to explore options for electric system at the outset and at a minimum to design for future electrification to support the county's carbon neutrality goals, as well as its own sustainability goals.
30 seconds remaining.
Okay. On EV infrastructure, they're meeting the minimum, but we actually recommend higher levels of 50% EV ready with 10% of spaces with EV chargers. And I just note on that they are planning on using carbon offsets as well as renewable energy credits to cover some of their greenhouse gas emissions from electricity and the use of fossil gas. So commend them on doing the credits, but actually would encourage them to avoid carbon offsets when they actually could be using design elements to reduce carbon emissions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Our last public speaker is David Peterson on behalf of Bowman Consulting. David should be joining us in person, but it looks like he's actually online, so we'll set the timer and get you ready.
Yeah, hi, this is David Peterson. I'm with the applicant. I actually don't need to speak, so I will yield my time back. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public speakers for this item.
Thank you. Do we have any commission reports?
Yes, Transportation Commission heard this, as was mentioned, at the meeting last Thursday. The topics, for the most part, of course, revolved around transportation. Those included the east-west connection, north-south connection, the redesigned 23rd Street South, and the new protected bike lanes on both 23rd Street South and on Crystal Drive. Those were all very well received by the Transportation Commission. The other issue was parking. The parking was deemed appropriate here. The reconstruction of actually across the street, the entrance, narrowing the entrance was well received. The new bike lanes were very, very well received. That's something we're really very much looking forward to, and the fact that 23rd Street South will be rebuilt from one end to the other rather than piecemeal is another great advantage to this. The commission made the finding that the vacations are consistent with the master transportation plan. That was voted unanimously to approve, as was this project itself. The Transportation Commission voted unanimously to recommend it as recommended by county staff. And that's the Transportation Commission report.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I circulated a memo, an SPRC memo, on Saturday evening, so we'll be referring to that. So Mr. Cullen and the applicant did walk through a lot of these issues that were discussed during SPRC and the LRSPC process. Some of the kind of key areas were certainly the open space. This neighborhood has been keen on having additional open space, and it's certainly called for in the sector plan, and the applicant is providing those spaces, albeit in different dimensions for open space. 10 because the adjacent parcel has yet to redevelop, and then open space 11 is being provided in a different location, but is larger than what was called for in the sector plan. I think during the discussion tonight, open space, particularly the design of the temporary open space number 10, is ripe for discussion. What does that look like? The applicant has revised that design, so credit to them for that. I think it's something we should discuss a little bit this evening. The other item is kind of the building form massing architectural changes. Now, as the applicant and staff walk through, there have been changes to the design of the buildings to increase step backs, bring the scale of the building down to a more of a pedestrian scale. There is one facade, that kind of western facade of the western building, that will be facing the realigned Clark Bell that does not have a step back. So now, candidly, this was not a source of a lot of discussion at SPRC, so I'd like to put that out there. There wasn't a lot of concern about it, but I think it was in the staff report, maybe something for a little bit of discussion tonight. And then sustainability, as we heard from Chairman of C2, E2, kind of raised some concerns. The applicant did modify the proposal, and as was just walked through, maybe potential another discussion. My intention is to at least start with the county manager's recommendations for the site plan, all the accompanying rezoning, and then the vacations that the vacation we have to do as well. And I guess that would be conclude my report at the moment, Madam Chair, and I would yield back.
Thank you so much. So right now we have open space, architecture, building and massing, sustainability, or other. Are there any other areas, topics for discussion? Commissioner Hughes?
Community benefits.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so let's start with open space. Any questions? Commissioner Guerin?
Didn't even put it on yet. So I really applaud the applicant's efforts to increase open space overall with the total number in excess of what was planned for the area. I appreciate this attention to long-time priority in the community and identified in the sector plan. I'd like to hear a little bit more about ways to maybe accommodate the landscaping issues for the interim park. Is there any, I understand that there are some concerns that the interim park doesn't look as appealing to the community or as useful as it might. And I wonder if there are ways we can address this going forward. And or if you can give us a timeline for when we think the redevelopment of the WeWork site might be coming. I imagine that's years out.
Yeah, thank you. So I think in terms of the open space, I think we've tried to accommodate a space that we feel like meets the needs of what we've heard from the community, meets the needs for the community at the project, provides a flexible open space that can be used for a variety of different events. We think that's important as called for in the sector plan. And then we've tried to accommodate variety of landscape uses, both with shading of the trees, providing an insulated open space kind of separate from the street so people feel like when they're in the open space that they're kind of separate from, the streetscape conditions and the roadway on 23rd Street. And then we've looked to, provide, seating and places for people to linger, places for pets, and sort of variety of different uses within that. So.
Thank you. I need to, it's more of a conversation at the moment. So given that we didn't hear public comment on this tonight, perhaps you've already addressed this well enough that the community feels very happy with it, but is there a sense that you'd be willing to continue working on this if you felt it wasn't meeting the needs of the community?
We certainly would, and that process would take place, I think, during the final landscaping plan and vetting that with staff and discussing, what kind of feedback we can incorporate here. I do want to highlight one thing. We went to the Parks and Recs Commission back in November, and we had shown what the interim park condition was, and we got really good feedback from that group of people and had conversations with DPR and staff on how to incorporate that feedback into an updated design. And so what you're seeing today is actually a new design than from what we've shown in previous SPRCs, and it takes a lot of that feedback from staff and the community into consideration.
Thank you. That's really helpful, and we certainly often defer to our colleagues on the other appointed commissions for their expertise in those specific areas. Do you have a sense of what the timing is for the redevelopment of the WeWork site? Anyone? No?
Hi, Matt Ginnivan.
That's Matt, I'll put you on the spot. When?
I think that, right now it's an operating multifamily asset, and so it's not I would not say in the near or medium term. I'd say it's probably 10 plus years at least out.
Okay, thank you. If this is an appropriate time, since this is open space, I would like to just comment on the plantings as well. So I'm not sure what biophilic planting is.
That's just referring to the nature of the planting and just trying to green the space in general, both at the ground floor, and then we've talked about kind of bringing that to the level 2, kind of those setback areas, kind of increasing the amount of visible green from the streetscape.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, and I appreciate Mr. Burns' comments about pollinators. Just for the record, I hope he's still listening. The native grasses, even with their wind-borne seeds, do provide a valuable food source to our birds, our native birds, in the winter and the early spring when food is scarce. So I'm all in favor of that. Would you consider, given his comments, adding additional native plantings that are shade tolerant? And, we have many. Or continuing to work with our urban forestry staff to add more plantings?
Absolutely, and I think per his comment, I think we've provided a fair bit of back and forth with him directly on recommendations and kind of trying to establish a plant palette that everybody's happy with.
Yeah, excellent. I haven't raised this before in this setting, but the county has a very active volunteer base. Tree stewards, master naturalists, master gardeners. We even have our own native plant nursery. And I don't know if this is something that can be coordinated, especially when we're talking about an interim space. I understand you probably don't want to be involved in planning this park twice and putting a big investment in and moving things. So I wonder if that's a conversation you could start with Vincent. He certainly is well coordinated with all of that. And that's all I have on this until we get to building. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on Commissioner Hughes?
So we have a large lawn space here in your current interim plan, and I want to make sure I have a few facts right. Like most of Crystal City, this will be built over top of a structure, correct? So my biggest concern, and sort of Commissioner Gearing, is success of the nature space. We're going to have 1,400 families, more or less, using, we'll just say they're exclusively, just for a moment, for argument's sake, the 6,000 square foot of lawn, and we're planning on planting natural sod, I presume, right? Okay. So the mall doesn't survive this. Nothing of in our urban spaces, our schools that we build in urban environments, we use artificial turf. Our areas that we use high intensity grass things. And I will lead by saying there's nobody better in this county at changing the plants and maintaining their landscape than JBG. I'm gonna tell you that because I go through Crystal City all the time and I enjoy the color changes, and I watch your landscape crew rip out an entire beautiful lines of Liriope and replace it with a beautiful new, set of plantings. It's gorgeous. However, I want this to be a success. So what are you going to do? Because when we put, a drainage pit over top of the subway station, we ended up with causing maintenance issues for them. How do we get a lawn in this urban environment with 1,439 families sharing it and keep it green? What's your plan?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So just to answer your question about the structure and how it's built, so there's 5 feet of cover over top, so that allows for plenty of soil for trees, plants, all of that. Also plenty of space for drainage below something like a lawn, and that's gonna be, the best defense is a lawn that gets sunken, gets wet, stays wet, doesn't dry out, and then you have activity over top of it. And then there's opportunities to introduce either fiber reinforced soils or like high-use soils that have a different compaction level, still work great with the sod, but they rebound better from heavy traffic. I think those are the best case success from a buildable standpoint.
I'm glad you've got that plan down. And I said this for my colleagues because I know you're going to be here long past me. And I look at the Costco building and regret the beautiful picture I saw and the reality I experience. And what I don't want to see happen is that a lawn we find out is an unsuccessful method of providing an urban park. There's a reason they're not very common. I'll put it that way. So I'm glad to know you've got 5 feet of drainage. I'm glad you're working on it just like the lawn on the mall where we had to, it's the gravel underneath that's the secret. It's a pond basically, and it drains immediately. So I just wanted to leave that out there. I want to have that public conversation so that it becomes a more conscious conversation for staff moving forward, that Crystal City is a really hard place to have an active lawn. I hope it works, but if it doesn't, we need to be honest about what type of urban environment for parks and open space we can actually have. So I appreciate that from the staff, and I look forward to experiencing this lawn in the future.
Thank you. Any other comment on open space? Commissioner Weir and Commissioner Peterson. Okay, hearing nothing, so we will move on to architecture and building massing. Any comments, questions on this topic? Did you have one? Okay. Commissioner Weir and Commissioner Peterson? Okay. Sustainability. Commissioner Lantelli.
Yeah, I really just have one question. I noticed that you have uplights for the trees on one of the passageways. How does that work with the dark sky compliance?
Yeah. So you can have, I guess, cutoff, right? There's a certain level of cutoff you can have with uplighting. I think that was referring to wanting to create, a sense of, lighting that's more directional towards the building to just provide, slight reflective light off of the buildings. It wasn't specific to, directionally straight up to, we've done in the past dark sky compliant uplighting.
So there is such a thing?
Yeah, there is.
Okay, because it seems like it doesn't, intuitively doesn't seem that they work together.
I think it's more in general of like, it's not directionally straight up in the air. It's more off to the side to provide that kind of reflective light.
And it'll be maintained that way so it doesn't inadvertently go straight up?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other, Commissioner Hughes?
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask the applicant about whether they considered kind of removing fossil fuel from the building, kind of their process for at least kind of thinking through that in their analysis.
Yeah, that is the challenge, right? We recognize the relationship of the built environment and the grid, right? And how does one lead itself to the other? We also recognize, unlike a Band-Aid that we rip off, we work towards it. I would say specific towards this project with regards to electrification is appropriate electrification, not electric resistance. That's actually a little worse than gas, basically heating water and air with a filament. So what we're trying to do, and we did this through the zero carbon analysis, is study where is the technology today, what are the ancillary effects of going full heat pump based electrification. Some of the challenges when you're dealing with high-density buildings like this is we have limited roof area, first of all. So if we're going to have air source heat pumps, there's not enough roof area to serve the amount of density that we're looking at. Also, another thing to consider when we're talking about electrification is capacity. We're talking about electric cars, more data. We want to do heat pump-based heating solutions so that we can manage our electrical load a little bit better. So in order to go full electric, that's a significant upcharge or additional capacity and transformer that would require additional sizing and space, as you guys know. But also when we're dealing with dense buildings, space being at a premium, where our solutions for mechanical systems and domestic hot water start to get more narrow. Unlike a building that's got a wide footprint and maybe 4 or 5 stories where we have a lot of roof area that we can work with, we have to have centrally based systems. So one thing that's nice about the solution here is that while it is gas for tempering the heat pumps, let's keep in mind that the source of heat for tempering the heat pump in your unit will be gas. It'll also be central gas for domestic hot water. However, when the technology gets to the scale that we want, you replace one piece of equipment and you transform the whole building, versus having in-unit electric hot water that you got to take out and you don't have the electrical capacity to do it. So really what the challenges are at this scale are 1, roof area for air source technologies, 2, electrical capacity, and 3, technological limitations at scale for centralized air source heat pump based solutions. However, we have studied it and looked at what it would take to get there. So what we've recognized also is to put a premium on energy efficiency, bring that density down. But usually those are the real tricky ones to deal with at scale.
Yeah, and I guess if you're also maybe potentially working against yourself, if you make the electric building, then you're also kind of above the ASHRAE targets, right? That you're kind of.
That's a great point.
Right.
Energy efficiency, right? More electricity versus gas and how that affects your ASHRAE savings. But let's put ASHRAE aside, just energy density, really. What's our EUI, our energy usage intensity? That's what matters. So as an industry, this is the problem we're trying to solve. How do we do electrification, air source, in an environment like we have? It's not temperate, it gets pretty cold. So even when on days like today, the heat pumps are going to be off and they're going to be locked out and you're going to be in electric resistance mode, which is worse. So we're trying to come up with scaled heat pump based solutions. And we've done these studies where it takes a pretty significant amount of space. What do you do with the cold air in the winter that you're producing as a byproduct?
So then am I hearing correctly that it's JBG Smith's commitment then to, once the technology is available, to be replacing these older technologies? Is that sort of the goal?
Well, certainly the goal. I mean, I think commitment, right, is very hard when we're very far out from that technology being available. But as part of our overarching corporate sustainability goals, we have established benchmarks for ourselves as a company to get to net zero. So absolutely, as those technologies come along, we're constantly evaluating those opportunities within our portfolio.
Yeah. All right. So I guess two comments from what C2E2, their letter, and I know you've been working with them. So before I say this, I want to commend you for, as they did, for working with them and updating the building. I share their concern, though, that what you're doing is, and as it can be commended, it should be basically anti-stakes. What you're doing now is what every applicant needs to come in and do. And we have a building incentive program, and that's great, but this is basically what everybody needs to do. The two things that I would, in their letter, that I would highlight, though, one, the electric vehicle charging, it is much more expensive to come back later to install it. And so some estimates are it's 6 times more expensive to come do it later. And so I would encourage you to, it is extra electrical capacity, that's a huge barrier. running the conduit, et cetera. But if you're coming back to do it later and running conduit and everything else, it's much more expensive. So I would encourage you to see if there's a possibility to do it now. The second one is your RECs. I understand you're trying to offset and you're trying to do that, but RECs are really a last resort. They shouldn't really be a first one. And so the industry is moving away from them really almost entirely. A lot of the carbon offset programs or carbon programs don't even allow them anymore for companies. So it really should be, and the rationale is you're buying greenhouse gas benefits, air quality benefits that are somewhere else. They're not here. And so, something to be considering as you're bringing forward future projects to C2E2 or to us. But I thank you.
So Commissioner Guerin has a comment, followed by Commissioner Hughes, and then Commissioner Sully.
I'm just going to second Commissioner Schroll's comments, including thanking JBG Smith for their willingness to meet with C2E2. I think that even given C2E2's interpretation of the shortcomings of this, we get a little bit further every time you're willing to meet with these commissions and get closer to our goals. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Hughes.
I just want to take my plug to remind the applicant that in their environmental and bike rooms to plan for e-bikes. Their proliferation is coming, and while they're not standardized yet, the addition of 120-volt parking is appreciated for those of us who generally use it. And also consider the vertical space and using European parkings instead of the standard way. There's a lot better options out there. Thank you.
Commissioner Sully.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to associate myself with Commissioner Schro's comments, and I would encourage the applicant and the design team to start pushing buildings towards less glazing. I think, given the electricity load and the burden that we have with that, the more efficient the building is, the less glazing, the more insulation we can insert. I think that's the only caveat I would throw in. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Weir or Commissioner Peterson on sustainability?
No comments.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to community benefits. Community benefits? Community benefits, going once? Oh, right, Commissioner Hughes?
Thank you, Commissioner Patel. I was too excited about the possibility of an Art Deco revival coming up with Commissioner Sarley's comments. I had a question for the applicant or for staff, but I probably the applicant will be able to answer it best. I see we're adding to our stack that's currently growing for the River House project. How many units, this 35 on-site units that will be provided at River House, what percentage of the units at River House will be affordable at the end of this project, assuming all the other buildings you're building in Crystal City continue on their process towards completion and actually get built? Because this is a continual theme we have now with our friends at JBG.
Hi, Kedrick Whitmore with Venable, representative for the applicant. We will do some quick math on that, Commissioner Hughes, but while we do that, I do want to say that this River House stack, as you mentioned, and the affordable units that are located there were part of the original Crystal City PDSP that was negotiated in 2018, 2019, and ultimately approved in 2020. And of the buildings and development sites that are included within the PDSP, this is the final one. So all of this has been kind of leading up to this point in the approvals and in the River House affordable units. So we don't anticipate at this point that there'll be any more in the queue that would be providing affordable units within River House.
And a question for staff: do we currently have all of the units at River House as committed affordable, or are there still units left that JBG or other applicants have yet to put forward as a community benefit?
I think what the applicant's saying is that those commitments have been made through the entitlements, but, like for example, the Plaza One project or other projects that committed to that are still, they haven't gone through those commitments.
Okay. I simply just want to continue to remind my fellow commissioners that, the $8 million of AHIF contribution has to go somewhere. And as we just heard from Commissioner Stroll so consciously about how buying carbon offsets other places doesn't necessarily bring the community benefit where they are. I'm still 100% pleased that the River House development continues to deliver CAFs, while not exactly right here, pretty darn close. And I do know we have some Crystal House opportunities in a few other spots. So it's just as a reminder to continually push that we find a way to get them as close to the community as we possibly can. So with that, thank you to the applicant.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Any other comments on community benefits? Commissioners Weir and Peterson.
No comments.
Okay, so Commissioner Scholl, I'm going to turn to you for motions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll say at the outset, my intention is to sort of take these individually in sequence, because if one fails, then other ones become moot. So with that, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the attached ordinance to the staff report dated January 4th, 2023, to rezone the property known as 223 23rd Street South and 2250 Crystal Drive, RPC number 34-020-003-017-018-265 from CO Mixed Use District to CO Crystal City Mixed Use Crystal City District.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Gearin. Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger. Aye. Commissioner Gearin.
Aye.
Schroll.
Aye.
Lentami.
Aye.
Sarli.
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
Weir.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Patel, aye. 10-0, motion passes. Second motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, before I make it, just after I make this motion, we probably want to leave a little time to see if there's any discussion on the motion before we move to a vote. But with that, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the attached ordinance to the staff report dated January 4th, 2023 for the Crystal City Block Plan for Block M, CCB-M-2, dated November 16th, 2022.
Seconded by Commissioner Gearin. Would you like to discuss your motion?
I would just like to say with the block plan, this block plan has had a fair amount of discussion. Kind of the first iteration of this was for the parcels on the other side of the block that we considered a while ago. And, the community had a fair amount of participation at that time. And then we had two LRPCs to discuss the revised site plan for this side of the block. And so, I think the concerns were about namely open space and that was the big one, and underground and other things which were dealt with in site plan. And so I think we're in a good spot as reflected by the limited public comment we had this evening.
Any other discussion? Okay. Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Steinberger. Aye. Gearin.
Aye.
Schroll.
Aye.
Lentami.
Aye.
Sarli.
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
Weir.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Patel, aye. 10-0. Motion carries. Motion number 3.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the attached ordinance to the staff report dated January 4th, 2023 to amend site plan number 11 to remove 102,159 square feet of site area from the subject site plan located at 220 20th Street South, 2221 South Clark Street, 2100, 2200, and 2250 Crystal Drive, and 223 23rd Street South, RPC number 34-020-003-017-018-265-268-269-281 with modifications of zoning ordinance requirements, including reduced parking and other modifications as necessary to achieve the proposed development plan, subject to all previously approved conditions and the revised and new conditions of the attached ordinance.
Commissioner Scholl, I'm sorry, did you say also 289 and 290?
I did not. No. They're not part of the recommended motion.
On mine.
I'm reading from the county board, county manager report.
We don't get the updated copy.
Can we get clarification? Are 289 and 90 on there?
Madam Chair, I think what you would probably
Well-
want is, there's not a motion on the floor until it's seconded.
Yeah, who's going to, thank you. All right.
Mr. Cullen, I think there's a question about the alignment of the RPC numbers in the county manager's recommended motion 3 with some missing potentially.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Stroll, could you mind repeating that? So I'm looking at the staff report, and we have 289 and 290 for this item there.
Yeah.
So what's the question again?
Commissioner Scholl's looking at the one online.
It's right at the end. You just stopped at 281.
No, so I'm reading the county manager's recommended motions on page 2 of 163, and they don't appear.
Yeah, that's true.
I see.
289 and 290.
So
are not on there.
I ask unanimous consent to add RPC numbers 289 and 290 to my
Any
motion.
objection?
I thought we need 291 as well. Did I miss that?
No, that's not in there. But any objection to 289 and 290? Okay, no objection. Okay, so now,
No, I mean, I think that the rationale for this is they're just moving density within the sites on this block to facilitate this. This is essentially what we talked about last month, which was that, you know, they're moving around density to do this. So we've already sort of discussed this with the PDSP, but this is just a formality.
any other discussion? Okay, Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Steinberger? Aye. Kieran?
Aye.
Schroll?
Aye.
Lantelmi?
Aye.
Sarli?
Aye.
Hughes?
Aye.
Weir?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
Patel? Aye. Motion carries 10-0. Next motion?
I do appreciate the eagle eyes of my colleagues. That was a good catch on the RPC numbers. All right. So I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the county board adopt the attached ordinance for site plan number 464 to permit the construction of up to 11.46 FAR total density, including approximately 1,147,494 square feet of residential area, 1,439 units, and 22,927 square feet of commercial gross floor area located at 223 23rd Street South and 2250 Crystal Drive, RPC 34-020-003-017-018-065, with modifications of zoning ordinance requirements, including additional density, reduced parking ratios, required loading spaces, tower separation, density exclusions, and other modifications as necessary to achieve the proposed development plan, subject to the conditions of the attached ordinance.
It's been seconded, but I'm going to seek unanimous consent because I think it's 265 and not 065.
I think I said 265, but that's great, yeah.
Any objection? Okay, any discussion, Commissioner Schroll?
I think before we vote on this, I do want to thank the applicant for your continued work on this. You did a great job of continuing to welcome feedback and amend this proposal based on staff input, commission input, citizen input. So, and you continue to do that up until coming to PC. So thank you for that, and encourage you to kind of carry forward what you're hearing this evening and doing that between now and the board, but also after this building is built. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Steinberger? Aye. Aaron?
Aye.
Schroll?
Aye.
Lantelmi?
Aye.
Sarli?
Aye.
Hughes?
Aye.
Weir?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
Patel? Aye. The motion carries 10-0. Next one.
So this is for the vacation. I move that the Planning Commission find that the proposed vacation of a portion of an easement for public street and utility purposes and the vacation of an easement for public sidewalk and utilities along 23rd Street South are in substantial accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or applicable part thereof.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Steinberger.
Aye.
Guerin.
Aye.
Schroll.
Aye.
And Tommy.
Aye.
Sarli.
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
Weir.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Patel. Aye. Motion carries 10-0. Any other motions? Any other? Nothing. Okay. So this matter is concluded. So that is the business for the PC tonight. We will be reconvening on January 11th to discuss the following items. Number 1, Arlington Junction Park, GLUP Amendment. Number 2, the 5-year review of the comprehensive plan. 3, Commercial Market Resiliency Zoning Ordinance Amendment. And 4, PC Business. Thank you, everyone. PC stands in recess. Let's go. James held us back.